Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very, very good evening. Sunday the 4th of February 2024. This is a subscriber only transmission. They've been subscriber only for some time now and will continue for the foreseeable at least. Thank you to all of you who are continuing to support me and continuing to make these transmissions possible. Very good evening to some people who are just joining me, Lee and Ian. Good evening to both of you, as well as everyone else who is here today. So what today the headline really was around the Labour Party and what their strategy is for them to continue to secure the bloc Muslim vote. And here we go. The strategy to continue to underpinning their strategy to secure the bloc Muslim vote is to portray the Labour Party as the party of Muslims. It's as simple as that. This is Arood Shah, leader of Oldham Council, and she's in, I'm just getting the right position, she's in Alexander Ward with her female candidate Ghazala. That's Ghazala there next to her, and her contingent of exclusively, is it almost, or if not all, exclusively Pakistani men, Muslim men. This is the leader of Oldham Council who claimed misogyny, remember, yet here she is pandering to that very misogyny, or exploiting that very misogyny in Alexander Ward. She also claimed racism and repeatedly claimed racism, yet here in Alexander Ward, with her out campaigning, is not a single white person or a black person or any, the complete absence of diversity. In the world we come from, we would say, alarm bells would be going off at a campaigning photograph such as this, I think. Those of you who are unfamiliar with Oldham, the Alexander Ward is not an exclusively Muslim ward. In fact, the Alexander Ward, only a segment of it is Muslim. There are huge council estates in Alexander Ward. Alt Estate is there, Roundfarm, the community of Roundfarm is there, and most significantly also is Holt's Estate. Holt's Estate has a strong history of white working class voters. Well, people, maybe not voters. And what the strategy here, you've got to understand what the strategy here is, as well as portraying that the Labour Party is the party for Muslims and taking this message onto the streets, as this image clearly demonstrates. What Arood Shah and her Labour Party friends are also doing is disenfranchising the white working class community in that ward, and by doing that, there are two outcomes. The first outcome that the Labour Party hope to achieve is that the white working class just stop voting. So if they're not going to vote Labour, they don't vote at all. So that is why the turnout in areas like Holt and in other wards in Oldham, Fitton Hill, Limeside, the turnout is abysmally low. This is a strategy employed by the Labour Party. If they don't look like you, if they don't look like you, if they don't talk like you, if they don't understand where you come from and what your issues are, then the likelihood is you won't go out and vote for them. So an image such as this is not accidental. It is just as much a strength, a demonstration of strength within her Muslim contingent as it is a demonstration of contempt for the working class white community in this town. This is your council leader. This is your council leader. So, outcome one is the working class white communities don't go and vote. Outcome two, which is what they also want, is that if they do go and politically engage, they politically engage with what we consider to be the far right. Not the far right such as someone like me that they try and portray as the far right, but the genuine far right. So that is what they want to do. First of all, they want to disenfranchise them, and secondly, by disenfranchising them, they demonize them. And to my Muslim friends who listen to me and try and figure out where I'm coming from, many of you have recently spoken to me about the conflict in Gaza. And the argument you have given to me, and it's not an argument I disagree with, in fact I do, I'm sympathetic to this argument, is that the Palestinians were driven to support Hamas, the terrorist organisation Hamas, in case there's any ambiguity from any of you as to my position on this. They were drawn towards supporting Hamas because the mainstream parties had either ignored them or failed them. They'd held them with contempt, they'd ignored their needs, and thereby driven them towards the areas in which the extremists operate. Those familiar with the politics of Northern Ireland will also know this as a strategy. So this is a strategy deployed by the Labour Party in Oldham, by Arud Shah's Labour Party. And all I have to say to the likes of long-standing Labour Party councillors such as Steve Bashforth, Marie Bashforth, Pete Davis, you should be ashamed of yourself. You people should be ashamed of yourself that you've allowed this town, our town, to come to this where the leader of the council is engaging in activities such as this. It is divisive, it is disenfranchising, and it is, most of all, dangerous. Very good evening, Gary. I missed you coming in. That's Gary Martin up there. How you doing, Gary? And Arud Shah, of course, she doesn't, this isn't just her behaviour. We've seen white politicians, white Labour Party politicians, acting in exactly the same way. Most notable, of course, is James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon, the most infamous samosa nibbler. This is a tactic out of their playbook. So what is going to happen in Alexander? How is Labour going to secure the votes? Because what they do in Alexandra Ward, will be replicated across the country. And let me explain what's going on in Alexandra Ward. The Labour Party have come under immense pressure from within their own core vote community. Oh, let me bring something up so there's no ambiguity. Remember how the police have repeatedly arrested me and all of that sort of stuff on the basis that I'm racist and I make reference to the core vote? This is an article in The Guardian. Labour acts and fears Muslims will not vote for party over Gaza stance. Read that first paragraph. KEIR Starmer's office has begun polling British Muslims amid growing concerns in senior Labour Party ranks about the damage done to their core vote. So even the Guardian and the hierarchy within the Labour Party acknowledge the Muslim vote as their core vote. This is not me rabble-rousing or causing issues. This is in The Guardian. And Starmer has launched some focus groups. So how is this playing out? It will play out in Oldham, in Alexandra Ward, one of the main places it will play out. What you've got in Alexandra Ward is an encore vote, a discarded vote of the marginalised white working class. Will they be mobilised? Who will represent alt, round form? I think no one. And I think no one will be able to represent them whereby they will be able to mobilise and get the vote to turn out. Because once the vote becomes disenfranchised, it is harder for them to come back out and vote. Once someone stops voting, or if someone has never voted, the longer they leave it, the less likely they are to vote again. It's as straightforward as that. And I believe that is the strategy of the Labour Party in Oldham. Disenfranchise the white working class first and foremost. Secondly, there's a civil war taking place in the Muslim community, as this shows. And that civil war is the Labour Party. Many of the Muslims feel that the Labour Party has betrayed them over the Gaza stance. Because for a long time, since I was a child, the Labour Party has portrayed itself as a safe haven for minorities. The Conservatives, we were led to believe, were the racists and the far right who wanted to deport us, round us up and kick us out. And the Labour Party is where we went to for protection and support. That is maybe a simplified narrative, but it was the narrative that many of us from the communities I come from were raised to believe. And the Labour Party and the politicians within the Labour Party were on the side of the Muslims. Well, clearly Gaza has shown that this is just nonsense. The first Iraq war should have shown that. Remember, we went to war. It was what? The second Iraq war is what I meant. When Tony Blair took us to war over weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist, the sexed up dossier. And I think most of us now are of the opinion that that was a war that had nothing to do with us and it was all about money and resources. Well, unfortunately, the Muslims did not learn the lessons over Iraq, and that's because what many of you need to understand is that whilst we Muslims talk about a global Muslim ummah, that's a brotherhood, a global Muslim family, certain parts of the family are more important to us than others, more symbolic to us. And one of those is the Palestinian issue. Now, why that is, we can talk about another day. I think there are certain elements of it without a shadow of a doubt that are to do with anti-Semitism. And there are other elements to do with the history of the injustice and the relevance of a number of holy sites. But put that to one side for now. I'm not here to give you a history lesson. The Labour Party, KEIR Starmer, took a very clear position that he was on the side of Israel. The Labour Party were on the side of Israel. In fact, the Labour Party went further than the Conservatives. And Starmer, as recently as I think 3 weeks ago, at a conference, sorry, I've still got my cough, at a conference, talked about or made reference to how the Palestinian state, the two-state solution was no longer an option. Even David Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, the Conservative Foreign Secretary, came out with a more pro-Palestinian, pro-peace position than Starmer did. And what's gone on, clearly gone on, is Starmer and his team have done their numbers, looked at where they need to win the seats, and what position on Israel needs to happen for them to win the seats in the places they need to win. What they didn't factor was that in the areas that they have comfortably held, the red wall, where they held even during Brexit, Sorry, my internet connection went, so I'm just trying to get it back. Yeah, I'm back. My apologies for buffering, Sheila. The joys of Vodafone internet. I'm afraid if you ever get an internet contract, try not to get Vodafone. Okay, so what took place is they went and did their focus groups, and they've suddenly realized that once safe seats are no longer safe. And those once safe seats are all in areas where the core vote, the Muslim vote, determines whether they will win or lose an election. So that's what's taking place. Now, why is Alexandra Ward in Oldham relevant in that? Well, Alexandra Ward just epitomizes the problem they've got nationally. What they've got in Alexandra Ward is a Muslim vote. And remember, in Alexandra Ward, they hold all 3 council seats. And they've never been challenged. No one's ever come anywhere near taking any of those seats off them. And the reason why? The reason why is because the Muslims have put up their own candidate. Feeling betrayed, the Muslims have put up their own candidate. And that's why Arooj Shah, as early as the end of January, is out there trying to shore up the Muslim vote. She's not gone into the white communities to go and shore up the white working class vote. She's gone into the Muslim communities to fight head on with her Muslims, to fight head on the Muslims that are rebelling. Now, whether they win or not, and who wins or not, is going to be intriguing from my point of view. Now, I get the uncomfortableness amongst many of you as to the Muslims who have rebelled. Because some have rebelled. Some have rebelled because they feel betrayed. They're not anti-Semitic. They're not racist. They just felt that this party was meant to represent them, and now it isn't. And there is a small contingent that clearly are anti-Semitic. And what I say to you, and I want you to look deep inside yourselves, not towards just your actions or your beliefs, because I'm making any allegations. I'm asking you to reflect on yourselves and those around you and what you've witnessed over the last 4 or 5 years. When I first came to this, the white working class vote in almost its entirety was loyal to the Labour Party in this town. And what I demonstrated to all of you was the injustices that the white working class community suffered, endured, the way in which it was treated, the allocation of resources, ignored, and of course the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of your children. And as a consequence of that, we divided the Labour Party vote, the core white working class Labour Party vote. We destroyed it. We pulled the rug from underneath them. Am I right? And when we did that, and this is the truth as I see it, as I look back, there was a contingent, which includes most of you, if not all of you, I think all of you here, definitely. There was a contingent who went on this journey with me for the right reasons. This is about tackling inequality and injustice. But there was a smaller demographic that clearly had a set of beliefs and attitudes that we'd consider to be racist. That didn't mean we stopped doing what we did. We continued and we educated and we supported those people, and many of those have come on a journey with us. So it is the same here with this Muslim demographic. No other issue would have affected the loyalty of the Muslim core vote than what's taking place in Gaza now. No other issue, I do not think, could have done what it has done. And in many ways, this is the equivalent of the grooming gang scandal, where they clearly see the politicians that were meant to protect them, meant to represent them, have failed to do so and ignored them. And that's what's taking place here in Alexandra. Now, I know one of the candidates, one of the main candidates. I don't know him personally, but I know of him. And he's not a racist. I don't even think he's a misogynist. He's not like this. So I'm interested. I'm genuinely interested to see how this plays out. Because Arooj Shah and her team, this team here, you're seeing here, Arooj Shah and this team will have to portray them as racist and anti-Semites. And I'm interested to see which side comes out on top. Which leads me to the next question. Which is this side? Who are on Arooj Shah's side? Who is on the Labour Party side? Well, in the Muslim communities, there are, so far, from what I can tell, 3 specific groups through which Arooj Shah and her associates are desperately trying to shore up the Muslim vote. You will have seen about a month ago, Arooj Shah reached out to Aftab Hussain, the former independent, who, by the way, stood against Arooj Shah and beat Arooj Shah when he first became a councillor, and brought him back into the fold of the Labour Party. The reason she's done that is because Aftab is effectively a senior voice in one of the big clans. The Pakistani community, and to a lesser extent the Bangladeshi community, operate a clan structure, a village structure, where voters vote en masse according to their candidate, the person that represents their tribe. So that's what Arooj Shah is hoping on first and foremost, that the tribal identity, the clan identity of these people, providing she gets the right candidates, their pulling power supersedes any sense of identity that these people have with the Muslim element and what's going on in Gaza. She's hoping that one element of their identity has more sway over them than being a Muslim and having an affinity to the events unfolding in the Middle East. Will that work? I'm not sure. I'm interested to find out. My own thoughts, my own observations are, the younger they are and more established they are in this country, you know, whether the second generation, third generation, the more established they are and the more younger they are, then that clan loyalty has less of a draw or less of an influence than other aspects of their identity. Now, of course, I would prefer them to have as a primary identity feature their British identity. Of course I would. And elements across the values of our society, but we're not there yet. I don't think we're going to be there yet in my lifetime or any of your lifetimes. And that's as a consequence of what we're seeing here. These people play on it. They are playing on those racial divisions. They are playing on those religious divisions. They are playing on those cultural divisions. And the people who are doing this more than anyone else are the Labour Party politicians. So that's first and foremost what I think will play out. And not just in Alexandra, but in towns and cities across the country come the general election. The next strand to this is, of course, what I refer to as the cartels. We know of Arud Shah's links, open links with organised crime in this town. And if you look across the country, with this community in particular, you will see links to organised crime across the country with the Labour Party, within the Bangladeshi Pakistani community. Simply not just because it's organised crime as a gang of organised criminals, but because the organised crime element of it is just an offshoot, one of the offshoots of the clan structure. Each of the clans has an offshoot that is involved in criminal behaviour, criminal actions, criminal activity. Now, what does that translate to in terms of the interference in elections? The interference in elections is the harassment and intimidation of securing postal votes. As a friend of mine in Glodick said to me last May, such and such a body came and knocked on my door. He's a dangerous criminal. I handed over my postal votes. It's not worth the hassle. No, I didn't go to the police. Because I've got to live here afterwards. My family's got to live here afterwards. So when such and such a body knocks on the door, they hand over the postal votes. This will be going on across the country. So the cartels will be mobilised. Will they divert away from the heroin trade to the postal vote business? And the last strand is just old-fashioned corruption. Bribery for votes. Promises. Bribery for votes. Promises. How did they make some promises? Well, a simple one. You can't have missed it this week. You can't have missed it this week. Let me just bring it up. Just by coincidence this week, Arud Shah and her council has announced that 500 new social homes are coming to Oldham. 500 new homes. She hears from local people every day whose lives are being broken by the broken housing system. Who are the people she hears from every day? Who are the people she hears from every day? So what you've got is these houses. The promising, the corruption, first and foremost, is around the rigging of the housing waiting list. And the need to rig the housing waiting list, and I'm going after council's own figures here, there are more than 7,500. There are more than 7,500 families on the council housing register, and thousands of applications waiting to be processed. There are over 500 families in temporary accommodation. So they'll be building 500 new social homes. Of course she wants to blame the Conservatives, but last I remember the Labour Party were in power for the best part of 20 years. And I don't recall them changing the right to buy scheme, do you? No. Come to my community, come to Westwood, come to Caldas and speak to people. Speak to people and ask them, can you get higher up on the housing list? Can you secure a house if you have the right political connections? Can you secure priority housing if you prioritise supporting certain candidates? Go and ask them. See what they tell you. They will likely point to houses and new estates where they believe that has happened. The housing list is neither fair, and this system they've got of bidding and stuff is just a joke. It's designed to prevent people from getting houses, not to support them. It's nonsense. And what Arud Shah doesn't say on these 7,500 families is actually how many of these 7,500 families are from this town. Now, am I bordering into a space of racism? I do not think so. I think every town in this country, every city in this country, should prioritise their own first. That's not racism. Their own can be people like me, it can be people like you, it can be Christians, Muslims, whatever. Sorry, I've got something flying around in front of me, which is why I'm swiping at it. It can be any of us. Elaine Taylor stood up at a council meeting. I think it was Dave Arnott who asked a question. And she fudged it and tried to blame the government about housing lists. There is no reason why a council cannot set the criteria for its housing waiting list. You can see it here. There are more than 7,500 families on the council housing register. Well, the council housing register's criteria is set by the council. It's not set by the government. When Arud Shah was in Chariton South, in the lead up to when we took her out, her last tenure as leader, she encouraged and supported a new wave of asylum seekers to come to this town, knowing full well that we were already overwhelmed and did not have the capacity. But the council got some money for taking these people in, money that plugged a short-term need for cash, but caused massive, significant problems down the line. And those decisions have been made by repeated council leaders in this town. So I'm not just pointing the finger at Shah. So the consequence we've got here, in terms of corruption, is what will people be promised in exchange for votes? And who will be promised this? You've got houses, homes. We all know about the council grants and how they operate. Now, don't call it a bribe, remember? But Oldham Athletic, so this isn't just towards the minority community, only Oldham Athletic Football Club in the lead up to the last all-out elections, mysteriously, it's a private company, mysteriously and suddenly received £1 million investment. Now, my white friends, in particular my football supporting white friends, said, Raja, it's about time we had some of ours. I understand their position. It's about time they had some of the pie. You'll recall, and I go back to Arud Shah, that in the lead up to when she got elected in St Mary's last time round, first time round. The Ghazali Trust bought the old Glodic swimming baths at a knockdown price. So grants, the transfer of public assets, all of those shenanigans, housing list priority, I think you'll see all of that. So how will the Labour Party re-engage and re-establish re-secure their votes? I'm not seeing anything legitimate. I'm not seeing them going out and engaging in the Muslim communities on issues of policy. They'll try and use the leverage from the clan structure. They will look the other way, whilst those associated with them and the criminals that they associate with will go out and take and participate in industrial levels of postal vote fraud, corruption, intimidation, harassment of people. And finally, they will bribe as many people as possible. And that, I believe, is the strategy of the Labour Party in the Muslim communities to re-secure their core vote. And I hope it doesn't work. But I think you need to know what the strategy is. And what you'll see, Gary, is this strategy will not just be used in Oldham. This strategy will be used across the entire country. Yes, Starmer. Trust is lost. Yeah. One senior Labour MP said, Muslims are not only predominantly Labour supporters, but they are also geographically important. Thank you very much for the free coffees, John. I'm grateful to you. And I'm grateful to all of you who have been contacting me. In fact, I'll do this bit now. Many of you have been contacting me wanting to increase your subscriptions and stuff. It's not going to work, I'm afraid. I don't want you to do that, first and foremost. We need the numbers. We need, I think, to get us to a position where all the transmissions go out free to air in the lead up to the election. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think we're going to win the election as it stands, because I haven't got the time or the effort to put my energy into it as it stands. So we need, as it stands, I think we need about 30 more people to take out a subscription at 75 pence a week. And the only way subscriptions come in, so you know, is when the stories in particular get shared on Facebook. So when I put something out on Facebook that's powerful, that's emotive, people share it. We get to something like 50 shares, 75 shares, somewhere near 100 shares, and our subscriptions increase. We get one, they come through at the other end. Unfortunately, the shares over the last week on Facebook have just plummeted again. There's nothing I can do about that. It's something I've pleaded with all of you to do. Clearly, my content isn't of the caliber it needs to be, because if it was, you would be sharing it. So my apologies on that. But if we don't get to the another, I said 30, and that's at the minimum of the 75 pence. If we don't get those people, then we'll just carry on as we are. I'm sure you'll take entertainment and joy and satisfaction from these interactions, but we won't win the elections in May. And by winning the elections in May, victory for us in the elections in May, because first of all, you've got to determine what victory actually is. In the local elections in May, for me, are threefold. First of all, we make sure that the white working class communities in places like Holts, in Alexandra Ward, are protected and represented and do not lurch to the far right as a consequence of what Arud Shah and her friends have been doing. That's vital and important to me. The second indicator of success, of course, is that the Muslim candidates that do come through, in places like Alexander, if it's a Muslim that comes through, it isn't worse than what existed before. And we have lines of communication with them, we can inform them, we can influence them, and they are willing to represent the entirety of their communities and the wards that they represent, rather than just a narrow interest group. So I'm hoping to meet with some of these candidates over the next couple of months and support them. So I'm supporting them not because I'm divisive, but supporting them because I want to take them to a place where they are inclusive of the wider communities around them. And the last indicator of success, of course, is that we reduce Arud Shah's Labour Party control of Oldham. It's got a majority of 3 seats at the moment, and we take the council into no overall control. I don't say this from a position of arrogance. No one else is going to do this. No one else is capable of doing this. And I'm hoping I can get... And we can't do this without it being played out in the open, with as much reach as possible. And the only way we get reach is on social media. Because as you've seen, the Oldham Times and the Council Funded Press and their partners will not support us, will not work with us, and will not promote our very reasonable alternative views of what's going on in this town and what needs to be done to fix it. So thank you to all of you who've offered to increase your subscriptions. Please don't. We need the numbers. And to get the numbers, if you want to do anything, and I know you guys do, but if you want to do anything, please consider looking at the posts that go out on Facebook in particular. And if you can share them. And if I'm not writing to the standard it needs to be, then you need to tell me. And I'll go away and reflect. I don't have a mentor. I don't have a focus group. I don't have any reference apart from how I interact with you guys and taking the feedback that way. So if I'm coming up short, you need to tell me I'm coming up short. Okay, let's continue. I know. Valid point, Gary. I was asked. I'll get to the next thing I want to talk about in a moment. I was asked by Billy if I would go to Rochdale. I think some of you guys went to Rochdale on Saturday. I responded to Billy, and I said, unfortunately, Billy, I can't get to Rochdale on Saturday. And the reason why, for those of you who came with me on Friday, you'll have seen I was in court on Friday, and I was meant to be on trial on Friday. And those of you who sat in the courtroom with me will have heard me have an interesting exchange with the magistrates. And that exchange with the magistrates, who, by the way, tried to tell me that my bail conditions, including me not being able to reference my trial, I corrected him, and then he was corrected to confirm that my bail conditions are as I believed them to be and not how he believed them to be. Now, the reason why he didn't want me to talk about my bail conditions, and remember, I've been on police bail now nearly for 3 years, constant for 3 years, and there's not a day goes by where I don't wake up in the morning thinking, will there be a bang on my door, or my door get kicked in for the police to arrest me again? The trial did not go ahead, and that's because the trial didn't exist. They just made up a date. My trial dates are, as I shared with you last August, there are Thursday the 2nd of May and Friday the 3rd of May. They tried, some idiots at the court thought they'd get smart and tried to bring forward my trial to the 2nd of February, where my barrister was not available. They knew my barrister was not available, and caused me nothing but alarm and distress. So I couldn't get to Saturday because I was shattered. Because I don't just turn up to court. I had to turn up to court preparing the defence the best I could with a solicitor who had no prior history of the case. We had to go in prepared for trial. And it left me completely drained, so I never made it to help Billy on Saturday. And the second challenge I have with Saturdays, of course, is it's one of the few days I have with my daughter. And I've spoken for Billy at a number of his events. I have no issue with Billy. I hope as many of you can do go and support him. His fight is our fight. Do I think he'll win? I think he's left it too late to stand the way he has done. But I think if he does stand and does get a decent amount of votes, he should look to see which wards those votes are coming from and put up candidates in the May election for Rochdale Council. So I don't think it would be a wasted effort at all. He just needs to think it through. So no, I couldn't get to Saturday. And my ability to help Billy at this moment in time is restricted. My trial's in May, it's 3 months away, and we've got to prepare. And if there's any work we do, and I say this selfishly, if there's any work we can do, it's to try and finish off what we'd started, Gary and Oldham, which is reduce Oldham Council to no overall control. You know, when you look at something, you know, when you're an expert in something, like Denise does pies. Sorry, Denise, I'm picking on you, and not because I want another cheese onion pie, but if there's any, and one being made anytime soon, do let me know. What I mean is, anyone can look at it and think, oh, it's easy, you can do this, this, and this, and this. But you know, because you do it so well, how long it'll take, what your ingredients will be, and the exact process to do it. You're not going at it blind. And I think a lot of people are going at how to take Oldham Council into novel control in May completely blindly. I know how much effort will be required. I know they will not let go easily. And I know we'll have to do it, if we decide to do it, with one hand tied behind our back because of the betrayal by the Royton Independents and the Shaw and Crompton Independents, the independent group, and the Shaw and Crompton, whatever they're, the Royton, you understand who I mean. I know, should we go there, that we will have to build bridges between those people who have let me down, let you down, failed you. Letting me down is a complete irrelevance. And I know we'll have to go and engage with the Muslims in the areas where they're going to be taking out the Labour councillors and support them to find the courage to be decent human beings who will represent all of us. And unfortunately, those guys, as I found out when I got Montaz over the line a few years ago, those guys have their meetings at 1, 2, 3 in the morning. I don't know what you mean by actually how things would fit. My position, I think my position My position is really straightforward when it comes to Failsworth. I am a friend of Failsworth. I think without Failsworth, this fight ends. The banners were first raised in Failsworth. Sean Fielding was taken out by the people of Failsworth. Ignore the politicians. Stuff the politicians. Holby and Wilkinson, I don't care about them. Fuck them all. This isn't about them. This is about the people of Failsworth. It is the people of Failsworth who came to the rescue of this town. And Failsworth doesn't consider itself to be part of Oldham, but it's the people of Failsworth who came to the rescue of this town. They voted in their thousands. And I don't care what anyone says. I'm 100% certain that they didn't vote because the bins weren't emptied properly. They didn't go and vote in their record numbers against the Labour Party because the streets weren't clean. They voted because they, like us, were outraged at the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children. So, how are things in FIP, or with FIP? I don't know. FIP exist where? In Failsworth East, Brian Hoban, Hindle and Lucia Ray. Lucia's up for re-election, isn't she? From what I've seen, as an observer, same as you, Sheila, and all the others, what I've seen is Mark Wilkinson and his team seem to have announced a candidate to stand against Lucia in Failsworth East. Mark Wilkinson will stand in Failsworth West. As I don't know what they're not FIP added or something else. Tig Failsworth, maybe. Mark Wilkinson and his team will stand. Mark Wilkinson will stand in Failsworth West. And this lady will stand some at Charnock. My apologies, she does something with bees. I don't know her, I have nothing against her, so we're clear from the outset. Now, I think if it plays out as I think it will play out, there is only one outcome. And that outcome is that Lucia Ray will lose her seat. Now, Lucia, as an observer, and I don't live in Failsworth, as an observer, I think she's done a decent job. She's the most community-minded of the Failsworth Independent Party councillors, and I think she's done a decent job in Failsworth East. She's been a decent councillor. I mean, I'll ask David Gidman what he thinks. He's just popped up. He never voted until 5 years ago. I don't think many people did. David, I don't think you're alone. Is it Lisa Charnock? Have I got that right? Her name? I might have got her first name wrong. But the only consequence of her standing, I think, is that the independent vote will be split. I'm not sure how it'll be split. But I'll guarantee you one thing. The likelihood is that the Labour Party will come in through the middle and win in Failsworth East in exactly the same way as the Labour Party won in Failsworth West when the Failsworth Independent Party put up a candidate against Mark Wilkinson. So I think that is what will take place. Now, why? Susan, why what? Why are they fighting each other? Catherine, thank you. Why are they fighting each other? Is that the why? I think, if you're asking me a why, I think the fighting each other has got nothing to do with the people of Failsworth. I think the fighting with each other has got nothing to do with what's best for Failsworth. I think the fighting with each other now is a pissing contest between Mark and Kath Wilkinson on one side and their entourage, and Brian Hoban and his team on the other. I think it's nothing but a personal fallout between two people, two families, two factions, however you want to describe them. And instead of stepping back and accepting as leaders, it is not about them, but those that they serve, that should matter. Their egos have taken over. And I say that of Mark Wilkinson as I do that of Hoban and the others. And I hope one of them at least has the sense to reflect on where it will end. Yes, Louise. It's that. So in terms of Failsworth, I think that's what. Susan, I'm afraid I'm struggling, Susan. You know, your one word or two word sort of comments, I can't read you. I'm not a mind reader, I'm afraid. But that's my position on Failsworth. And my offer still stands because I am a friend of Failsworth, because Failsworth has been a friend to me. If there is anything I can do to help put this right, then I'll try my best. I'll go into Failsworth no different than I'll go into Alexandra. And hope that the candidates there see the bigger picture and represent the people that they serve. But without Failsworth, it becomes very difficult. As for my position on Failsworth, in the convoluted way I've got to this sharing, because I'm working out as I'm talking to myself and talking to you, I'm working out myself. If I had my way, it would be the same as it was last time. I would encourage people to vote for the Failsworth Independent Party in the East. I think Lucia has been a good councillor. And I'd encourage people to vote for Mark Wilkinson in the West. Do you think Labour will do more for you? It's not a question to answer me now. It's for you to reflect on. Here is Rochdale, and they elected the man from Pendle. Yeah. Look who went to support him. Dr. Chowan, Jim McMahon, Angela Rayner, Elaine Taylor, Arud Shah, bloke who's not even a councillor next to Aftab, former mayor, Shahid Mushtaq, Abdul Jabbar and Ruji Surjan. Aftab Hussain is there, and Aftab is my friend, so there's no ambiguity. I've always considered Aftab to be a friend. He's treated me decently, so I have no animosity with Aftab. I understand what he's done and why he's done it. He's a politician, as I've said to all of you. I'm not a politician. My issue with this photograph is Jim McMahon And the deputy leader of the Labour Party, that's the deputy leader of the Labour Party and a shadow cabinet member of the Labour Party, are in a picture with Aftab Hussain, who's standing next to Arooj Shah. He's not standing on the edge like Ruji Shirjan is. He's standing central. Aftab Hussain put this out less than a year ago as his election leaflet. Separate to fixing the potholes and maintaining footpaths, he set out his position on LGBT being taught to children in schools. The Labour Party reported it as a hate crime. Aftab doubled down on his position and said he stood by every word he said. We now have the deputy leader of the Labour Party and the shadow minister for whatever sharing a platform with a man that only months earlier, they reported to the police for committing a hate crime. Why has this not made the national news? And the reason why Aftab, Arooj, Chauhan, Jabbar, Mushtaq, Kumar, that's it, former councillor, former mayor, the reason why they're there in Rochdale is because of clan politics, the very same clan politics I made reference to earlier. It's going to get messy in Rochdale. It's going to get messy because this man has entered the fray. For Rochdale, for Gaza, George Galloway. The people of Gaza don't have a vote in this election, you do. He's clearly fighting it on a one-issue agenda, and that's Gaza. So the way Labour are countering this, and you can see it straight here based upon what I talked about earlier, is using the clan system. So much so, that a man that they accused of committing hate crimes less than a year earlier is now rubbing shoulders with the deputy leader of the Labour Party. I'm sorry, but if this had been Jeremy Corbyn with someone, he would have been all over the national news. So why not here? Why not here? And I appreciate you're not a fan of Aftab, and I'll share you a story why I am. When I was being followed home and the police were involved in encouraging people to try and kill me, because that's what making reference to me as a gay Christian convert was, and sharing my home address online, when the Pakistani gangsters were following me home, Aftab was one of the few Pakistanis who came to my aid and put it out there that he would take it personally if any harm came to me. Maybe he was playing politics and thought, if I can get this done now, I've got someone on side. Maybe that's what he was doing. But I took it in good faith. So one of the reasons I'm still alive was because this man protected me, and I owe him. And I'm clear on my position on the LGBT stuff. Oh, sorry, not Aftab Galloway. Okay. I don't know Gary, beyond knowing that he's an opportunist. Yeah, that he's an opportunist. I think many of you, I do as well, have an issue in which the way sexuality and sex education is taught in schools. I don't think this is a hate crime. It's not acceptable to brainwash our children at such a young age. Parents should be given the option if they want their children to be taught and the option to opt out. But the Labour Party decided that was a hate crime. And if the Labour Party decided that was a hate crime, then what is the Labour Party deputy leader doing rubbing shoulders with a man that they believe committed a hate crime? Going back to this lad, he's just an opportunist, isn't he? But I say to you, if Galloway did not enter this space, who would enter this space? If Galloway was not the alternative for these Muslims to go towards, I'm sorry, they'd go towards a more extremist, more militant, perhaps an Islamist aligned candidate or organisation. It's a bitter pill to swallow for me, because I do not believe he has the interests of the wider community of Rochdale at heart, and he sees Rochdale as an opportunity for him in the same way he did in Bradford and in the same way he did in Bethnal Green. But when your options are this for Labour, this becomes palatable for these people. No, palatable is the wrong word. I'll tell you the conversations I've had with the people in Rochdale that I know. Many see Galloway as a saviour. And I think that's his track record, isn't it, Louise? That's his track record. And you're right, Gary, Ian. This is what happens when you play identity politics. Oldham Council is on the list, and it's in the Daily Mirror last week. Let me just bring it up. Oldham Council is on the list, and of course they blame Tory cuts. Of councils that are at risk of bankruptcy. And it's based upon a statement that someone from the council gave the Daily Mirror. So it isn't based upon some ambiguity. Someone from the council provided the Daily Mirror with information. I'm just finding the Oldham Council has debts of 27.9 million in 2022, and the council predicts shortfall could top 42.5 million pounds by the end of 2025. So I think that's a shortfall. The Oldham Council shortfall was just under 30 million, and by the end of 2025 it could top 42.5 million. If a council, and it's increasing its council tax by the maximum amount, if a council is in that much debt, and I've been in debt in my life, badly in debt in my life at times, and then every penny counts, doesn't it? Every penny counts. What I brought up on this screen here is £36 million of money Oldham Council has loaned out to these councils. Leeds is a city. Plymouth is a city. Leeds City Council alone, they've lent out £16 million to. Plymouth, they've lent out 10 million to. And 2 councils in Scotland, they've lent out another 10 million to. £36 million of your money has been loaned out to these councils. And the interest rate they're getting back is 5.7 to 5.5%. Short-term loans. That's your money. That money that they loaned out to these councils has come from a source where it had been invested. Compound, remember, with the other bits of reserves it's got, where the return would have been far higher. Look after the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves, I'm sure it's the same. Look after the millions, and the hundreds of millions will look after the same. Why has Oldham Council lent out £36 million of your money at favourable interest rates to its mates in other councils? Leeds is a massive city. Why have we lent Leeds City Council £20 million or £16 million? There is a budget coming. And that budget meeting, council meeting, I think you will see a lot of fun and games played. The council's in a mess. And remember, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been saying they're going to go under. They're going to go under. One last thing I want to bring up with you. This is Howard Sykes' blog. He has a go at the excuse me. You didn't want to hear me coughing, excuse me. He has a go at the Sean Crompton Independents, or whatever they're called. The Hints, Hints. And Hints is going to get minced, by the way. Howard Sykes will mince Hints. Council bosses slammed as only 13 of 60 Oldham councillors found to have a valid DBS check. Only 13 of the 60 councillors in Oldham Council have a valid DBS check. The reason this became an issue is after we exposed former Lib Dem councillor Rod Blythe was a convicted child sex offender that the council kept hidden. And Howard Sykes, attempting to deflect attention away from that cover-up, jumped on this bandwagon that every councillor should have a DBS check, and a rolling DBS check every 4 years. I agree with him. Of course they should. So why is it that only 13 of the 60 councillors, remember, they all got in last year, they all got in last May, why is it only 13 of the 60 have gone through the process of a valid DBS check? And I'll tell you what would happen in any job I worked in. I would not appoint anyone without a valid DBS check. They would not start. Never mind for 8-9 months be paid. They would not start working for me. How can 47 of the 60 councillors in Oldham Council not have a valid DBS check? And I'll quote Councillor Sykes. Councillor Sykes said It is completely outrageous that the council has allowed a situation where so many elected members have not had these checks. It has long been standard practice for all councillors to have a valid DBS check. This is a disgrace, and it makes a mockery of any claims that Oldham Council is getting the basics right. The council is trying to reassure the public about CSE, but allows something like this to lapse. It does not fill me or the public with confidence. No wonder when I first asked for this information back in 2023, it was refused. I think. Well, actually, this is a sacking matter, isn't it? It's a massive safeguarding matter, and it's a sacking matter. In a town where at least one senior councillor has been convicted of child sexual exploitation offences, another councillor mysteriously disappeared, remember? After being charged. Made the newspapers before Greater Manchester Police when they come and arrest me. Another councillor was charged, and then the charges disappeared and the story was killed, which makes me think something else went on. Here we have Oldham Council, 9 months in, 10 months in, only 13 of the 60 councillors have a valid DBS check. And if we want to, and I'd like to expand to the independents, I'd like to know who those 13 are. I think we have a right to know who those 13 are. And to expand to the independents, I'm aware of, and I think it's time I shared this with you. I'm aware of an issue with, well, a couple of issues with the Royton Independents. The first issue is, of course, they now have advisors. They have people who go to meetings with them as advisors. Don't you, Maggie Hurley? Do your advisors, remember these are people who go to meetings with a councillor, with members of the public, vulnerable members of the public, who've arranged for meetings with them, not with their advisors. Councillor Maggie Hurley, are your advisors, are members of your big team, DBS checked by the council, because they are representing the council, because they're going on your behalf and you are acting as a representative of the council? Are members of your big team DBS checked? I suspect they're not. And secondly, what I'd say, share with you, is what sort of councillor, I'm looking at you, Maggie Hurley, what sort of councillor goes to a meeting that a member of the public has organised with senior council officers, where you've been asked to go and support that member of the public, and then ask the member of the public to leave the meeting so you can have a private meeting with the council officer, and your reason is, we can't arrange meetings with these people, so can I borrow some of your time? So here I am, arranged a meeting with the chief executive or the deputy chief executive, and I ask my local councillor to attend, and the local councillor rocks up and says, can you leave the meeting now, please? I'd like a moment with the chief executive or the deputy chief executive. What sort of councillor does that? What sort of councillor attends a meeting in support of a ward member, a member of the public, and then kicks out that member of the public from the meeting so she can have 5 minutes because she is unable to secure them 5 minutes off her own back. What a joke they are. What a joke they are. And using people, I am not at all surprised that after using so many of you, not one of the big team turned up for the CSE demonstration in Rochdale, where, let's be clear, Maggie Oliver had confirmed that the report in Oldham was a cover-up. And likewise, there's been nothing from any of the big team, or Hints, or Sandra Ball, on how the CSE report in Oldham, Maggie Oliver confirming the CSE report in Oldham, was a cover-up. I hope you found value in this transmission. My daughter's off school. She's not well. I think I've passed on a bug to her, or she's picked it up from school. I'm adamant she's picked it up from somewhere else rather than me. So I'm at home, I think, for the next few days looking after her. But I am around. If people need to talk to me, please do drop me a message. I will get back to you the best I can. Thank you to all of you once again who turned up and supported me on Friday. In particular, Warren Bates, who turned up, even though his brother-in-law had a nasty accident, he still turned up to sit there and support me. So I took value in that. Denise as well, who's I know isn't walking well at the moment and still managed to come out and support me. I'll try my best for as long as I can. Please, we need to get our numbers up. If you want me to help campaign and lead this campaign, and I do want to, but I don't want to be set up to fail, so I know how we need to do it and what we need to do. We probably need another 30 or so members. And the only way we'll get that is by you guys sharing the post. And if the posts aren't good enough, you need to tell me. And I'll try and improve. Take care. Good night.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.